Hello, hello. Is this on live? Just let me see. I think it is. All right. Let me see. I think the network is okay. So, hello. Today, I'm going to start the weekly tutorial now. And this is 10 p.m. in Japan time. And this is the 72nd episode for a Houdini Algorithmic Live, which is a weekly tutorial live for Houdini that I've been doing. And we are today what I'm going to do is to create this kind of a motion graphics effect, trying to create a morphing animation through a text like this, using SOPs. In this case, I am not going to use any solver, but only the wrangle itself. Okay, so let's do this. And before I get it into the detail, I'm going to explain the basic algorithm which I'm going to do today. So let's see. I am so the basic idea is to first create a text and do the morphing between the selected text. And in order to do that, what I'm going to do is to create a bunch of particles inside the text like this, and select the number of points. Let's say equal to n, and have the same number of points inside another text as well. And simply enough, I'm just going to move this particle from one point to another. Okay, and to do that, I am going to create some path for the particle to walk through. I'm not going to just straight transfer this point from one place to one place, because it's just going to be unnatural, looks unnatural. So what I'm going to do is to create a kind of a path using a curve like this for each of the point with the smooth like curvature. And based on the time, I'm going to make each particle travel through on top of this curve. It's a bit hard to see with the white. So in the first frame, the point might be right here, and the second frame right here, and third and fourth, and so on until the last frame. And to make it as a repeatable animation, I'm going to be able to select multiple number of texts. Like, let's say you have another text like C, and right after it has been traveled from B to C, I'm gonna make each of the particle travel back to A like this in one timeline from 0 to the end of the frame. So as a result, you'll be able to create a looped animation for text morphing. So that's my goal here today. And that's what you're going to create from scratch, and this is how it looks like. Now I'm using a Japanese font right now, but I'm gonna use the alphabetical font for the testing. Now after you have created the system, you can just replace the font to any kind of geometry or any kind of font. Or you could also use some like any kind of input geometry instead of font as well. If you just tweaked some of the things that I did. So it's pretty flexible, I think. So let's see how we do this. Okay, so first thing first, I am going to create a null controller, a null node, which, oops. First I'm going to go into the geometry node. Let me also save this. Okay. Actually, I've done a pretty similar things previously, like 10 episodes ago or 20 episodes ago. But the process that I've got to do today is a bit different, so you might learn the new things today as well, hopefully. So first I'm going to create a null node. I'm going to name this controller to have all the parameters to control the geometry or the system. And the first parameter I would like to use or create is the string, which is going to be the text, the multiple text which you want to move in between. So I'm gonna name this texts, and let's make this multi-string from, I don't know, 5 to 15, right? And let's write any number of text you want to move in between. So I'm gonna just type 3 texts. So hello, Houdini users, something like this. So with the return key, I have just made 3 lines of text. Okay, so what I would like to do here is to move in between those 3 text. First, you have this hello, then go into Houdini, then you go into users, and after users, go back to hello again. So let's have these information as an attribute first. So I'm going to create a attribute wrangle node. I'm going to make it as a detail and create a detail attribute for those texts. Okay, first thing first, I am going to retrieve that text by linking the parameters. So using a CHS as a string parameter, I'm going to copy this parameter, paste it to this channel so that I'll be able to get this string inside the fx. And I'm going to name this base. Now, next thing I would like to do is to split this multi-line text into 3 lines: hello, Houdini, and users. To do that, I'm going to use a string function for fx. I'm going to name the variable as lines and use the function called split. And the one that I want to split is this text, which has a multiple line. And in order to split the text with the return key or enter, the new line key, you can do that by saying \n for a separator. Okay, let's check this out. I am going to create the attribute, string array attribute called lines, and see what I get as a result. Now let's look at the geometry spreadsheet for detail. And now you can see that I have an array which has 3 items: hello, Houdini, and users. Okay, it's good. The next thing I'd like to get is the number of strings for this array. So I'm going to create another attribute called num and just get the number of lines. As a result, you should be able to get 3 like this. Now what I want to do next is to create a for loop in order to get each text at each for loop for iterations to create the path curve. So to do that, I would like to store each of the text into a different attribute. Like, let's say this one goes to line 0, this one goes to line 1, this one goes to line 2 as a string attribute. That is because it seems like using a Houdini expression or expression functions, it's a bit hard to access to a attribute string arrays. So for that reason, I am going to separate those 3 text into 3 different attributes. Okay, to do that, I'm going to loop through each of the text inside this attribute or a detail attribute wrangle, and get each of the line texts. Then use a set detail attribute function to create a attribute for each of the text plus i2ai, so that the first text will be called the name of the attribute for the first text is called as text 0, the second will be text 1, and the last one is text 2. And then I'm going to apply this line as a value. Okay, let's check. Now I have text 0, text 1, and text 2, and each of the attribute has these separated values. Okay, hello everybody. I have a question. What is \n variable for? This one. Now this one, when you use split function, you can split the text into a array from single string to the array using a separator. Most of the time you use like comma or a dash or something like that to separate the text, but if you use this one, you can split the text using the new line. In this case, this thing right here. This thing, which is called as a new line, can be used to separate those multi-lines into different string lines. That's what it's for. So as a result, you can combine the multi-lines single string into a multi-string arrays like this. Right? So okay, so in terms of the preparation, I think I am done. So let's connect this to a null node named as base. Now the next thing I would like to do is to create a for loop to access each of the text. If I have 3 text, I want to loop through 3 text. If I have 5 text, then 5 loops, and so on. So I'm going to use the for each number for that reason. Like this. And first thing I need to do is to define how many loops I need to run as an iteration, and the number of iterations has to be the same as this detail attribute that I've created, number of texts. So I'm going to refer to this detail attribute from here with an expression. So detail, looking at the base, and the name of the attribute is called number, and then looking at the first value. Okay, as a result, you'll be able to get this 3, and now you have a loop with 3 iterations. Okay, so for each iterations, I would like to draw a text using a font. So let's give the font, and for each loop, I want to replace this text. Currently, it is named as frame ft into a text coming from this detail attribute like this, right here. Okay, so we need to use another expressions inside this text field in order to replace this with the detail attribute value. So to do that, first, in order to use the expressions inside the text fields, you need to have this back quote. And inside the back quote, I am going to use the expression called detail s. The detail s means we're going to get the string value from the detail. Okay, the name of the node that I'm referring to is base, and the name of the iteration, name of the attribute is called text, and I have to add it with the number of iterations. So I'm going to convert the iteration number, which is inside this for each count, which is this one right here, which goes from 0 until 2 if I have 3 iterations. So I need to refer to this value as well from this expression. So I'm gonna create another function which is called detail. The difference between detail s and detail is that detail s is going to get the string based value, but the detail, in other hand, detail will get a number value like float or integers. So that's the difference, and that's where a lot of people confuses. And I'm going to refer to this node, and the number what I need to refer to is the iterations at 0. Okay, now in order to combine this number that I've got from this node and convert it into a string so that I can combine with this text string, I need to convert this number into string using a function like f2a, which is a Houdini expression specialized functions, which you can find from this web page, expression functions. Okay, so the one that I have used is detail function and detail s function and f2a. f2a is the function to convert number into string, right? Which is a lot of parentheses and makes me confused. Am I having the right number of parentheses? Probably. And what else? That's probably it. And okay, now if I check what the font gives, it gives users, which is the last attribute value or string value from this text 0 to 1 2. So what I'm showing right here is text 2, but if I change the iteration number to something different, let's say if I check this single pass to 0, then now it gives hello, and if I change this to 1, it gives Houdini, and if I change this to 2, users. So seems correct. Okay, now I'm gonna uncheck the single pass, and if I connect this into a for each end, you'll be able to get all the text merged as one geometry. Okay, any questions? So the detail is like the global component that being operated on, right? Yeah, that's right. That is correct. Okay, so now that I have got a 3 text for each iterations, what I'm gonna do next is to create a bunch of points on top of this surface for a morphing. Okay, so which is done using the scatter node, which is pretty easy. Now, it might be a good idea so that you can control the number of points on top of the surface. So let's create another parameter with the integer value, say number of points from 0 to, I don't know, 5,000. I'm gonna go with the 1,000 points. Okay, I'm gonna copy this parameter, paste it right here inside a force total count. Okay, so that you can control the number of points with these parameters. Alright, and this same number of points will be used for all 3 texts. Houdini, hello Houdini, and users. Okay, so each of the text has 1,000 points in this case. Now, right after I created the points, in order to create a curve path in between the different text, let's say from Houdini to hello to Houdini, I need to create a path for point to travel through. In order to do that, it's a good idea for each of the point to have its ID to create a connection. So I'm going to create a point wrangle node to attach a ID attribute. So I at ID is equal to point number. Okay. I have another questions. I notice when using the scatter node SOP, the point are not 100% representation of the surface. That's true. That is because it is using its own relaxing like functions inside a scatter node, which is controlled right here. Relax iterations. Normally, if you uncheck this relax iterations, it becomes more randomish, where the point has been scattered. And by using this relax iterations, you'll be able to have a decent, like same distance separations in between the points. Meaning, if you increase the number of these relax iterations, you'll be able to fill in the surface more and more with the same distance. So if I try to increase that, you can see that slowly it will fill the gap, but at the same time it costs more CPU, so makes it slower. So if you really want to have a like fill in the surface without any considerable gaps, then you might want to increase this relax iterations a lot bigger than 10, like this. But as you can see, it's going to take a lot of time to calculate, so most of the time I'm going to reduce the number of this. Alright. So, or it have missing points on the surface. Yeah, you can also convert the points from volumes, which will create a grid-like points, but in that case, maybe you might miss some curved points somewhere around here. So there's a balance you want to check. Alright, so it's same as using like relax node after you have scattered the points, and relaxing the points again and again and again using these iterations. Pretty much the same what's doing here, right here, but with less setup. Okay, now that I have got this ID, the next thing I would like to do is to think about how I'm going to connect this point with another text. So currently I have 3 texts like this, and the first string is hello, and the second string is Houdini, and the third string is users. Now, as I said in the sketch, I don't really actually want to connect it using a straight line, because that's going to create a really hard looking morphing, which doesn't really look organic at all. So instead I would like to create this kind of curved pass and smoothly connect to the next pass like this, and then smoothly go back to the A like this. So the whole pass, which connects all the string, I want to make this pass looks like really smoothen out like these, so that the whole animation really looks smooth. So in order to do that, one idea could be is to use a in-between points between the first text and the second text. Okay, so first the first points from the first text goes to some random points in the space first, then go back to some other points on the next text. That's what I would like to do here. In order to do that, I need to have a in-between points which is not coming from the text but coming from another space, or maybe coming from the boundary space of this font. So let's try to create this kind of points, or which is on the space. Okay, so to do that, it might be a good idea to create a boundary box of this users. So I am first going to create a boundary, then create a little bit of margins to the side and to the top. So I'm going to control these lower padding and upper padding. Maybe it might be a good idea to control these parameters. So I'm going to create 2 parameters here. Horizontal padding and vertical padding. From 0 to 10 for both. And let's give this to 1 and 1. Copy these and paste it to a lower padding first, and lower padding Z value as well, if that's correct. Not sure. Maybe not. No. I don't want to go this way, but I want to increase this way, so this should be this way. And for the vertical padding, I am going to paste it to this right here and this right here. And also I don't really need a box, so I'm going to make this as rectangle. Okay, seems like it's been aligned on top of the XZ plane, so let me change the direction to 0, 0, 1. Okay, looks good. Yep. And currently this is the text and this is the wrapping boundary shape. And what I'm gonna do is to create a scatter points on top of this boundary as well, using the same scatter node, having the same number of points. This one. Now, the problem here is that you can see that the edge is a bit too straight. You can see the boundary edge from these number of points, so I want to make this a bit more randomish with the boundary shape. To do that, I'm going to move each of the point randomly a little bit based on its positions by using some additional wrangle function. Now let's see what kind of function I could use. First of all, I could create a random value from each of the point, like this. Okay, now what I could do now is to move each of the point to the normalized p direction with multiplied by r together with let's see what happens with this. Okay, becomes a little bit better, I mean, in terms of the boundary, but I guess I could do this a little bit better by multiplying the length to off at p, and probably I can just say equal. Not that good. Not so good, is it? Alright. Maybe I shouldn't use this one. Okay, let's say I'm good with this. So this points became like this to make the edges a bit diffused. Okay, I might be missing some parts on the center, so might want to control this a little bit more. Probably I could use a fit 0, 1 for the random to become in between -1 to 1. Or 0.5. Yeah, a little bit better. Okay, let's try with these. It's not really a important things. Just wanted to make the edges diffused. That's all. Okay. Another question. What really happens under the normalized function? Okay. The normalize is pretty important functions for vector operations. Let's say you have a vector called v, okay, and which is, let's say, x is equal to 3 and y equals to 2 and z equals to 1, so meaning 3, 2, 1 and something like that. So currently the length of this vector is equal to a x multiplied by x plus y multiplied by y z multiplied by z, and get the square root. And this is the length right here. And by normalizing the vector, you can forcibly convert this length of the vector into 1. This is the normalized vector. The normalized vector means that the lengths become 1, but the direction is the same. And that's what it's doing. And this is used a lot because by multiplying the same lengths right here to the normalized vector, you can create the original vector that you had, which is this one. So vector is a normalized vector multiplied by L. So if you say if it's like remapping, yeah, kind of like that. It's pretty important concept for a vector, and one of the most used functions for vector operations, so you might want to remember that because it's pretty useful. And you could do the same things. If you don't want to use this function, you can do the same thing by getting the length of at p, which is also a vector, and divide p by this length, and which will give you the normalized vector as well, which is the same thing. Right. So where was I? So now that I have got this point in between points, in order to bridge from one text to another text, I'm going to apply same ID to the derived from the point number. So I'm going to copy this ID node so that each of the point will get this ID attribute from 0, like this. Alright, now everything looks good. What I want to do is to then merge these two geometries. One is the points outside and one is the point coming from the text, like this, and then connect this to the for each end. As a result, you'll be able to get the merged points list. And if I show this in a sketch, how does this list looks like? Let's see. So first you have a bunch of points which coming from the boundary of the text, and then you have this points covering the text. Let's say this is covering a text A, and then you have another point on a boundary, and then you have another B. Okay, let's say I have only 2 texts. So this is coming from the first iterations of the loop. This is coming from the second iteration of the loop. And now I'm having this 4 set of points, which each of the set has its own IDs. ID equal to 1, this one, ID equal to 1, ID equal to 1, and ID equal to 1. And in total, let's say you have 1,000 points, meaning you have 1,000 IDs for each set. Now, when you have the same ID in between those 4 sets, next thing you want to do is to connect each of the points like this. And do the same for other IDs. If if its ID is equal to 2, then connect like this, and so on for every set. And by making this curve itself is going to be used as a travel path, and currently it's still a polyline. So the next thing I'm going to do is to make these curves smoothen out by keeping the edge point using a interpolated curve. By using interpolated curve, you'll be able to create this kind of smoothed curve, keeping the points on the corner for the polyline, but can make the overall curve smoothen out like these. And this yellow pass is going to be the final curve pass in order to use for the morphing. Right, so that's the background algorithm that I'm gonna try to implement. I already have the point sets, so next thing I need to do is to connect each of the point having the same IDs using a at node. Okay, and use the polygon by group and set it to by attribute and use ID. And probably I also need to make this closed to make it as a looped curve. Okay, so now it looks a bit too noisy to see what's happening right here, so let's test it out with just one connection. So I'm gonna pick just one primitive out of this curve. Well, currently it is drawn as polygon. So let's say delete non-selected. I'm just gonna pick up the first polygon. And let me also show the wireframe. Now it looks like these. Right now it looks really pointy, as you can see. Okay, and let's try to convert this into a polyline first from the polygon using primitive node, and go into the face hull node, use unroll with shared points. As you can see, this is one of the curve that you have got from this list of polygons connecting the same IDs. Okay, so if I show up the points, it is connecting, so it's going from hello point, one of the points on the hello, then going into the random points derived from the boundary box, then going to the next text point, which is Houdini, then another boundary box derived points, then user points, then another boundary box points. So in total, if you have 6 texts, you have if you have 3 texts, in total you have 6 points as a result for each of the curve, like this. Now, what I want to do next is to make this smoothen out, okay, and using the interpolated curve. And the easiest way I could think of is to use the resample node with an option called interpolating curve for treat polygon as, okay? And you also want to control the smoothness by changing this length right here. Currently it's 0.1, but if I change to 0.05, it can be more smoothed. Okay, now let's also make this as a parameter so that you can control the smoothness. I am going to go back into the controller node and let's say smooth res stands for smooth resolution, from 0 to probably 1. And let's start with 0.05. Okay. And let's check if this smoothen out curve is really keeping the point on the connection. So if I show this up, you can see that the point's right here. It's a bit off, but mostly it's been preserved. Like this. Like this. It's a bit off, I guess. Maybe you might also want to check this one. Resample by polygon edge so that you can keep the original point position. Alright, so looks good. Now, although as you can see, even though I make this value really small and make the curve trying to make it smooth, you still see really a pointy connection, like pointy like corners, like this one. I mean, this corner is okay right here. This is smooth enough. This is okay as well, but these points right here, and right here is too pointy. And as a result, maybe the morphing animation might not be really smooth with these points. So, in order to make it a bit more smoother, what I'm going to do is to add additional points to each of the lines, which currently looks like this. But what I would like to do is to pick each line, constructing this polyline, let's say like this line, get the middle point, and to the tangent vector, to the perpendicular directions, I would like to move this middle point to a little bit off outside to make this line looks like a triangle shape, and do the same for all the curve. And as a result, I think you'll be able to get a bit more overall smooth curve when you do the resampling. Okay, so from this point to this point, get the middle point and calculate the perpendicular vector directions, which is this direction or this directions, and to that direction I'm going to move that middle point, maybe derive from the distance value of this line, then reconstruct the polyline. Okay, so let's try to do that. So before doing the resampling, I'm going to try to, or maybe before get it into the primitive node, after I have got this polygon, I could try to do that. And let's see what's the best way to do it. I'm going to, since I would like to get each of the line information from polygon, from each primitive, I'm going to use primitive wrangle. Okay, and I'm going to name this add midpoint. Okay, so first thing first, I am going to get all the points from each of the primitive. In this case, I only have one primitive, so I'm just running once with this primitive wrangle, but that's okay, because it's easy to check. Okay, so first I'm going to get the number of points from the primitive. Currently, I think I have 6 points. Now, I am going to add another primitive to replace this original one with the new one. So I'm going to use the addPrim function with the polyline class. Okay, now I'm going to then loop through all the points from the primitive. Like this. Okay, and let's get now in order to get the middle point of each line, I need to have the first point number and the second point number for each iterations. So what I need to do, the first point number will be the points from I index. Now the second point number should be PTS I plus 1, the next number. Now there is a chance that this goes over the number of arrays, so in those cases you want to reset it to 0. To do that you can use a modulus calculations like this. Alright. And then let's get the point position for each of the point from the point number like this. Alright, now that I have got the first point position and the second point position, now I want to get the middle point position right here. That is easy, you just need to add those two positions together and multiply by 0.5. Multiply by 0.5. As a result, you'll be able to get the middle point positions. Then now next thing you want to do is to get this perpendicular direction. In order to get that, first you want to get the directions going from this point to this point, and then if you just rotate it 90 degrees, then you'll be able to get the perpendicular direction. So let's do that. Okay, so first thing first, let's get this direction from point 1 to point 2 by just do the subtraction, and normalizing might be a good idea because we don't need the lengths. Actually, we could use the lengths, but maybe later. Okay, now it's time to rotate this direction 90 degrees using, in this case, z-axis. Okay, so to do that, you can use the matrix. First create an identity matrix, then create the rotational matrix using the rotate function. The number of angle you want to rotate is 90 degrees, and then use the z-axis to rotate. After you have created the rotational matrix, you can rotate the vector by multiplying this matrix to the vector like this. Okay, now I think I am ready to use this direction, which is already become this perpendicular directional value. It's time to move this middle point position to this direction with some value related to the distance between the position 1 and position 2. So let's do this. Because I am going to use the distance between position 0 and position 2, I might not need to normalize this one. I can just keep the distance as it is, like this. Alright. So let's create the new position, which is position M, the middle point position, plus the direction, and let's check what it's going to happen. Now let's multiply by 0.5 so that the half size of this length of this line will be used to move to this perpendicular direction. Okay, after I have created this new point positions, it's time to create this point to use it for a new primitive. Okay, so int not here. Int npt is equal to add point 0 new point position. And here it is. A new point has been created. Looks like it's been created to the right position, I think. Now let's use this for a new primitive to have a newly created primitive connecting all those points together. So to do that, you need to do a add vertex 2 times to this new primitive right here. Okay, so add vertex 0 prim, and the first point you want to add is the original point coming from this pt1, which is this point. So pt1, and you want to add another vertex, which is this new point that I've just been created, this npt. So npt. Now you don't need to add this pt2 because in the next loop pt1 is going to be used for this point. So you can ignore this pt2, but you can just add this pt1 and npt. As a result, you'll be able to get this kind of curve. Looks like a squarish curve. It's not closed yet, but that's fine, is it? Probably in order to make it as a closed primitive, I might need to make this as a polygon instead of polyline, like this. Alright. So, but you still have the original primitive, so you want to delete that as well. So remove rest of all, I'm going to say remove prim 0 prim num 1, and you are good to go, I think. Now this is still squarish, but after all the things that I did right here, first convert it into polyline and make this resampled, you can now see more smoothened out curve being created compared with the last time. Looks a bit better. Okay, now I might be able to make this more smoother by making this part smaller, but in return you also increasing the number of points as well, so you might want to control the the balance. I kind of see that the difference resolution is happening for each of the connections, so maybe after all I shouldn't check this resample by polygon edge. Yeah, probably. Okay. These part looks a bit too glitchy, but let's say I'm okay with it. Okay, so maybe it doesn't really matter if I have this resample by polygon edge or not. Maybe without is fine. Okay. Question. I have another questions. In the near future, can one of your vex relation effects and do the exact same in BOPs? And the set function, how do you know that parameter you are setting up? I don't see you calling any functions. For the first questions, if you can convert the vex function into BOPs, yes, you can totally do that. I think all the functions available on vex can also be used in BOPs as well. I don't often use BOP because, especially for those for loops, it's a bit hard to, takes a little bit of time to create this network for the for loops. So I tend to avoid using BOPs, but I think it is totally possible to use bobs instead of x. I do realize that some functions which is available in vex are not available in bob, but I forgot what that was. But maybe there is a workaround for those as well. But most of the basic stuff can be overwritten with the bob, so I think that's not a big problem. And for the set function, okay. If you mean by attributes, I mean there are two ways to set the attributes to your geometry, either pointer, primitive, or vertex or detail. One way is to use a at parameter, at syntax. As a result, you'll be able to create this attribute by this run over geometries or run over properties. In this case, I'm running over primitive, so I have just created this AA attribute like this. Not sure why it's 0. Huh. Not sure why it is 0. Another way is to use a set prim attribute to use. Probably I needed to say 1.0. If that's your question. Why am I having 0? Not sure. Okay. That is because I have removed the primitive right here, so no primitives is available in this case, so this doesn't really work. Okay. Okay, so the AAA attribute you just created have no parameters. How you set something when there are no parameters? How you set something you're mentioning that right now, previously I don't have this AAA attribute, but why does AAA just happens to be created? Maybe that's the question. Now even though the attribute didn't really existed, if by typing like this, it will just create a new one automatically. That's how it works in Vex, I think. If the AAA already exists, then the value will be overwritten. If it doesn't exist, then the new one is just going to be created. I think that's how it works in Houdini's Vex function. It's a bit weird, I agree, but it's also pretty useful if you get used to it. Right, hopefully that will answer your question. Now, where was I? Now I was controlling the distance for the point to move with the distance multiplied by 0.5 right here, but maybe in order to make it a bit more natural, I can use some random related value right here. So let's also create some random functions instead of 0.5. Let's say random based on the seed coming from I, as well as a primitive number, so primnum multiplied by some random values, multiplied by I, some multiplied by some random values, plus some random values, and multiplied by 0.5. We'll create more randomish scaled curve. And still, the overall looks decent enough, I guess. but you can't use set on that AAA. You could use the set functions after you have created the attribute. I mean, I can test it out using some detail attribute. So let's say I have created the f at AAA is equal to 1.0 like this for detail attribute like this. Now the problem is, after you have created a new attribute inside this single node, it's true that you cannot set detail attrib to the same AAA attribute in the same node, because you have to wait until this attribute has been created right here. So in order to use the attribute that has been created with the set, you gotta go into the next node, or use the like this. Okay, but well, in this case probably it still works, but if you do like this, yeah, it still works. But the thing is, you cannot really use the get value. I think the set value works, but the get value doesn't work. Now, if I do it like this, if I created the attribute using the set functions, now as you can see, the f at AAA no more works like this. It seems like there's like priority in between the set attribute functions and f at accessing function. So it's a bit of confusing. But if you do like this, it still works. Still, the set at detail attribute is being used. If you disable this, the f at is being used. Yeah. Okay, I have another comment. I once created the simple turbulence noise with bobs, but didn't get the exact same result with specs. I see. The bob has its own like specialized noise node, I think, which looks a bit different with the Vex functions. The Vex functions, all the noise functions is being separated based by the usage, like the curl noise, Berlin noise, periodic noise, and so on. It seems like the bob, when you use the noise with the bob node, all the noise function is packed into one node. So maybe the in behind algorithm is a bit different compared to the Vex. So that might be the reason it didn't give you the same result. Not really sure. Yeah, but that might be a problematic. Right. What was I? So now that I have got this curve, and if I remove this delete node, bypass this delete node, now I'll be able to get the whole curve network for each of the particle. Okay, looks good, isn't it? Now next thing I would like to do, I'm gonna make this available as well again. Next thing I would like to do is to make the point travel from one text to another text within the frame, this frame, and loop from first point to the end of the point and go back to the same point in the next loop. So that's what I would like to test. And in order to test out, I would like to show the original curve like this. So this point right here represents 3 of these 6 points represent the point position of the text. Okay, so that's where you want to stop the point a little bit to show the whole overall text, and then move up to the next point using this curve. So to do that, we have to think about how we're going to travel the points from one point to another through a curve, and how we can control the speed in between the curve. Okay, so that's the main idea here. And to do that, I am going to use the function from Vext called UV sample. By using this UV sample, I'll be able to get the point position on a primitive using UV value with the specific attribute used as a UV. Now in this case, we are referring to the curve, so this really doesn't have a V value. It only has a single point to define the positions. So first, let's create this UV value, which derives from the point position on the curve. Now, in terms of the V value, we could use instead a primitive number, because we have a bunch of primitives, and for each of the primitive, we want to control the speed or get the positions. So instead of setting the UV for a plane for a curve, I'm going to set the UV as the first U value is going to be the point position on the curve, and the second V value is going to be used as a primitive number to define which primitive we are looking at. Alright, so to do that, let's create the UV value using point wrangle. And I think it's a good idea to derive some of the parameters you can get from resample, which can be used as a point position on a curve, which is this curve U. Curve U attribute will give you a point position written from 0 to 1, which explains the point position from first to end point. So if I look at the geometry spreadsheet for the point, if you look at the curve U, you can see that it goes from 0, which is the first point position, to the last point position equal to 1. Now I might need to, if I look at this ID, currently a newly added point, which is this middle point around here, is having a -1 value, which could be a bit of problematic. So let's also fix this. Going back to the add midpoint, and where I have added the new point, which is this one, I can set the point attribute ID and use the same ID from the original primitive, which is same as the primitive number, I think. So I can just say the new ID, which is going to be applied to this new point, can be derived from the primitive number. Like this. Okay, now let's check back. Okay, so I no longer have -1 as an ID. That's good. Alright, so after I have got this curve U, I can replace this into a UV together with the primitive number. So go to UV for each point. Let's get the primitive number first from each of the point. You can just do that by first get the primitives, number of primitives from the corresponding points by using point prims. And since I think I am assured that each point only has been connected to one primitive, so you can just get the first primitive, and that it's going to be the primitive number that we're looking at. And let's also create the UV attribute using fCurveU, which is the point position on the curve, and prim as a second value, which is used as a primitive number. Third value, we don't really need anything, so let's just say 0. Okay, let's check. If I look at the UV value I have now, the 0 to 1 value, and the UV1, which is currently 0 because primitive number is 0, there's only 1. But if I remove this delete node, you can see that the UV1 becomes an integer value like this, which corresponds to the UV primitive numbers. And in total you have 1000 points. Yeah. Okay, looks good. Now, now that I have this UV value, it's time to move the point based on the frame using this UV value. Okay, so I'm going to create a point wrangle, or no, actually we want to move the point for each primitive, so instead of point, we're going to use the primitive wrangle instead. So for each primitive, I just need one single point. Okay, and let's see. The case here is that when we think about, let's just try to create a linear animation first, okay? And think about this controlling speed later to make it easy to understand. Okay, so first thing first, I'm going to create a frame-based value. First of all, divide the current frame number, which is this integer value, divide by the end of the frame, which is this 240 in this case. Now I want to make it as a float, so integer divided by integer gives you integer value, so instead I'm going to make one of the integer value into float. So in the result, you'll be able to get a value in between 0 to 1 by dividing the frame number by the end of the frame. Okay, which is same as normalizing the vector. I just normalize the frame number so that it will be in between 0 to 1, which is going to be really useful for many purposes. Okay. So next thing I'd like to do is to change or remap this f value into a point position using the UV sample node, UV sample function, which is explained right here. Okay, so let's do this. So in order to use the UV sample functions, you need the geometry number, which is always 0. Or I mean, not always 0, but in this case, we're referring to the original curve connected to the first input, so this is going to be 0. The attribute name is the actual attribute that we want to retrieve. In this case, we want to retrieve the point position, so that is going to be capital P. The UV attribute name is the UV sampling attribute that we're going to use, and that is called UV in our case. And this is the actual value for UV for sampling. So position is equal to UV sample. From the first input, we are referring to the point position and using UV as a sampling function, sampling attribute. Is that it? Yeah. And the final attribute is the UV that is going to be used in order to get the point position. Now the first value for this vector value is f, and which is in between 0 to 1. The second value is the primitive number, so prim num, and the last one is 0. Okay, and this should be the point which is on top of the curve, which moves along with this frame. Let's check this out. I'm going to create a new point at this position and then remove the underneath curve. Prim num. Why it's not being deleted? I gotta say remove prim. Okay, so now the new point has been created like this, and let's see if this point traveled through this curve with this frame value right here. Okay, you can see that the point is traveling as I expected and looping. Yep. And let's make this a bit faster, 200 or 120 or something. Okay, so what we need to check is to, when we do this for all the curve, does this give you, at some point does this give you this text message or not? And that's what we want to check. Okay, so if I play it, okay, you can see at some point you are seeing the text that you have set. Houdini, users, hello, Houdini, users. Okay, so I think it is working. So hello, that's 20 frame, you see hello message, then dissolve into another point set, and at 60 frame you see Houdini and users. Yeah, I think it is working. Alright, now overall it looks good, but the thing is that it is a linear speed, and I would like to make this text showing a little bit longer than the other point set. So right after it becomes 20 frame, I want to keep the text a little bit longer, then go to the next one. Then keep it longer in the 60 frame and goes to the next one. Keep this longer and go to the next one, like that. So we want to do this speed changing 3 times, which is equal to the number of text. Okay, so to do that we need to refer to the number of texts first, and the number of text can be retrieved from the space. If you go to the detail attribute of the space, you see this number equal to 3, so we can refer to that one. So let's use the object merge node to get to link with the base node. I'm going to refer to this base, connect it to the second input, and get the number from this detail from the second input. Alright. Now, in order to control the speed, I think it's a good idea to have a ramp parameter. So let's have that. In order to control that, I am going to, let's say I'm trying with this f value using the ch ramp. Now the ramp parameter can create this kind of a curve graph, and by making this curve controlled, you'll be able to control the speed, how the point should move, like this. Now if you if you want to do it whole manually, then if you have 3 points, then you can say maybe at 20 frames you can make this slower, and 60 frames make it slower again, and at 100 frames make it slower again, and so on. But as you can see, this curve graph has to be changed when the number of text has been changed as well, and also when the number of frames has been changed. And as you can see, it's a bit hard to control where those point are to stop. So right now it doesn't really work. So instead of doing like this, doing whole manually, I'm going to split the frame into 3 parts. First, if we have 120 frames, then by dividing by 3, you can have 40 frames for each. And so if I look at from frame 1 to 40, you have a transaction from this squarish point crowd, and in the middle you get this hello, and then at 40 you go back to this squarish point cloud. Same for the other 40 frames, from 40 to 80. In the middle you get text, and at frame 80 you get the square. Same for the other one. Okay, so thinking like that, we can use this ramp parameter for each 40 frames, meaning the whole frame number divided by 3 to use this ramp parameter. Okay, so a little bit of mathematics is necessary in order to do that, and that's how we can think how we can do that. Okay, so first thing first, in order to separate the frames into 3, we need 2 informations. One is when we move the frame, we need to know which part of the index or which part of the text we're in right now. Meaning if we are in between 1 to 40, we are at text 0. If we are in between 40 to 80, we're at text 1. Then if we are at from 80 to 120, we're at text 2. So we need to have those index number 0, 1, or 2. Okay, let's try to get that. And in order to get that, it's a simple calculations, and I'm gonna name this index, which is, first we can multiply the f value, which is in 0 to 1, by a total number of texts. So as a result, you'll be able to get from 0 to 3. Okay, and in the including the fractional numbers. Now if you make this floor, what you get is a index number which is in between 0 to 3 as an integer. So when you divide like 11, when the f value is something like 1.0, then If you make this as a floor value, you get 0 as an index value. If it's 0.5, I mean if it's 1.5 and so, then the value become 1, 2.5, you'll get 2, and so on. Okay, a little bit of problem is the last frame, because the last frame is equal to f equal to 1, and when you multiply f multiplied by number, which is equal to 3, and the floor number of 3 is equal to 3 as well. So for that reason, you don't really get a there's a chance that you get an index number equal to 3, which doesn't really exist for this text. So in order to prevent that, I am going to make this f number, maximum number of this x, to 0.999 or something, which is a bit dirty way to do, but by doing it, the f never reaches to 1, so the number you get is always the maximum number you get as an index is always equal to 2 in this case. All right. If we want to transform character by character instead of the whole word together, how can we approach that? You just need to say, I don't know, A, B, C, D, something like that. This will just do what you were seeking, I think. Like this. If that's answering your questions. This doesn't really matter if it is letter or not. It can be one character as well. Or you can just have mixing the characters and text. Like this. Hopefully that will answer your question. Right, so where was I? Now that I've got this index number, I also need a fractional numbers for each 40 frame sections. If we divide it into 3, we have 40 frames, 340 frames. And for each 40 frames, we want to have a value in between 0 to 1 to use it with the ramp. Okay. So to do that, we can just say, I'm gonna name it as a frac or fr value, and just multiply the f by number, and the result you get is in the value in between 0 to 3, and with the fraction numbers. But if you just want the fraction number and just remove the value over 1, you can just use the function called frac. As a result, you'll be able to get the value in between 0 to 1 for each set, for each 40 frame set. So from 1 to 40, you get the value in between 0 to 1. And after you got 40, again, from 40 to 80 frames, you get another 0 to 1 frame, 0 to 1 value with this. And 80 to 120, you get 0 to 1 again. So, because of that, you can replace this fr right here with the ch ramp to control the speed for each section. And as a result, you'll be able to control the speed more easily for each section. Yep, I think. Now, let's see. what's the other things that I need to do? So now that I have I applied the fraction value into with the ramp, it's time to make this make this fraction number back to a value in between 0 to 1 for a whole frame. Okay, so float new f is equal to a fraction number, and what has to be done right here? Divided by a number plus 1.0 divided by number and multiplied by index. As a result, you should be able to remap this fr frame value back into the value in between 0 to 1. And let's use this nf for here. Okay, now I haven't really controlled the curve yet, so let's do that. To make the middle part of the text somewhere around here slower, I can go into the 0.5 position on this graph and create a point, let's say 0.5 and 0.5, and let's also make this part flattened by adding these additional points on the left and the right side. The value something like this. So as a result, I am expecting the text to show longer with these ramp. Okay, seems like I'm only seeing users as a text now. Where did I do wrong? Huh. I think something must be wrong with this move point with this index calculation part. Let's see where that is. Okay, so if r is fraction of, this should be correct. Let me check if how does this fr looks like. For the primitive, okay, I'm going to set the attribute as a detail. So currently it's from 0 to 1 and going back to 0 and 1. Okay, so this one looks okay. Now the problem here is, I guess this one is the problem, nf. Let's check this nf value as well. If I see it going from, it's not what I expected at all. Okay. Okay, first of all, nf is fr divided by number. Number is this one plus let me also check the index. Okay, why did it start? Why the index doesn't really change? Okay, So this has to be wrong. Maybe this max part is wrong, I guess. Has to be minimum. Sorry for that. Yeah, that was the reason. Now, okay. Now, you might be able to see that the text is showing a bit slower than previously. Now I see a little bit of problem going from the last frame to the next frame. It doesn't really connect smoothly. Let's see why. In order to check that, I'm going to show up the curve like this. Okay, there is a little bit of jump from this to this. And that is probably related to this part again. What if I change this to F instead? Okay, after all, it looks better, so maybe I didn't really need it to do anything right here. Just seems to work fine without this minimum function. Okay, so starting to look better. Okay, I mean, if Houdini, I have a question. I mean, if Houdini to transform first H, then O, then U, and so on, instead of Houdini together. Ah, okay, I see. Let's see. In those cases, I mean, if Houdini to transform first H, then O, then U, and well, in those cases, you probably want to have another for loop inside this one for each of the characters, and yeah, try to create new connections with those. For maybe like these users, you want to split U, S, E, R, N, and S, and for each point set, for each characters, you want to apply another IDs, and let's say, I don't know, maybe ID 2 or something, and for each characters, you can, since we can apply another UV value for Z value, so we can apply this ID value for this custom ID values for each characters as a third value for the UV, then try to create an animation for each of the characters. I guess that's possible. Yes, that's possible. Yeah. Probably. I think, yeah. Well, I guess you need to do a little more work to do inside this for loop. First thing you need to do is to split these text into different characters. Maybe instead of using a single font, you might need to use the font for each characters inside a for loop, and you do need another for loop inside this for loop again to set up those information. Yeah, I think. If I finish this whole set, maybe I can try, but I cannot guarantee if I can make it in time. Okay, so for now, looks okay. And most of the things that I wanted to do is pretty much done, I think. Last of all, I would like to add a little bit of randomness when the point moves, because it is following the curve that I've created, which is the smooth curve, but I do still see some like geometrical, like not so organic path here, so let's add additional noise to the path to make the path a little bit randomish. So that's the final step that I would like to do here. And to do that, let's see, where is the best position to do that? Probably when we have created this position. So right after we have created this position, I'm going to create some noise value. Let's call this offset, derived from the noise, and use the primitive number and the frame value, which is in between 0 to 1, multiply by pi, and let's apply a sine function so that we will be able to get the value in between 0 to 1, going from 0 and go to 1 and go back to 0. Right. Or actually, do we need that? Yeah, probably. Okay. Well, and multiply by f end to make the whole value a bit bigger. For the z value, I'm gonna set it as 0. And multiply by some small numbers to control the scale of the noise. And last of all, subtract with 0.5 for x, y, z. Then I don't want to move into the z direction, so I'm gonna reset the z to 0. And let's see. I would also like to control the size of the noise. This part is just an optional, so it's not really necessary. Okay, and finally, I'm going to add this offset to this position. Okay, now let's try to increase the offset value a little bit and see what happens. So without the offset, okay, now I can see that the text is dissolving too much. So let's fix that. We don't want to apply the dissolving when the text is showing, so instead of using F, I guess we need to use FR. Alright. And then we also want to subtract the sine functions by 0, 1. Like this. Okay, I'm still seeing these noises. Okay, Okay, this doesn't really matter. But instead, I should multiply another values before using it, which is derived from a 1 minus from sine frame r pi okay. Now this should give you a better result. Now, does this noise is working? Not sure. If I make this 10, yeah, it's working. Okay, so the last thing I would like to do is to make this point as a little bit of trail path. So to make it a bit more interesting in terms of the visualization. So I'm going to use this trail node. Make this connected as polygon. Based on the speed, you'll be able to see more like traveling particles, which looks good enough. Let's increase the trail increment. Seems like this makes it slower. Alright, looks good. Let's test out with the other texts. Maybe there adds up too much of noise here. I'm gonna okay, and you can also control the speed. These that was too fast. If you want to show more text, you can increase the curve like this. Alright, getting better. Now when the speed is lower, the line you see when the text is drawing is really small, so maybe I can add additional code to keep the minimum length of the line to some threshold, which is not really necessary at all, but currently it's a bit hard to see, so let me add that additional code. So right after trail, I'm going to add the primitive wrangle. Let's say minimum length, and to do that, I'm just going to retrieve all the points information from each primitive, in this case each line. Get the point position for a first point and the second point. And let's define the minimum length. I don't know, let's start with 0.1. So if the current length of the line is smaller than 0.1, then forcefully increase the length to 0.1. That's what I want to do. So let's create a new point position. Which is going to be used to replace the position 1. So position 2 plus normalizing the position 1 minus position 2 multiplied by the min length. Okay, now the minimum length has to be the minimum length, so I'm going to use the max function together with the distance between those 2 point positions. So distance, position 1, position 2. Alright, now it's time to replace the point position. For position 1, set point attrib 0 PTS 0 with and pos. Okay, now 0.1 seems a bit too big, so let's decrease this. So this is going to be used as a minimum line length. I like this. Now maybe I would also want to control the maximum length of the curve as well, because this might be too long as well. So float max length is equal to CHF max length, and I'll just rename this minimum length to the float length, and then use the min function together with the length and max length. Alright, then replace this with lengths. Oops. Okay, forgot to promote this. So 0.1 as a maximum. So okay, some things is wrong, obviously. Alright, where is that? The minimum has to be the length is equal to, what if I disable this one? Okay, so must be wrong with this one. If it's more than max length, then wait. This was too small. Gotta say 0.1. Okay. Alright, so now I can control the maximum lengths and the smallest lengths. That's good. Alright. Overall, looks good. And let's see what else I could do. Let me check the comments. You are doing any way of transferring this to Unity? Maybe use custom attributes. I know in theory, but not in practice. You mean you want to use I mean, there's two ways to implement in Unity, I guess. One is to just bake what you have right here and create it as a animation, like using Algorithmic or so. to send it to Unity. Yeah, but if you want to create the interactive like system within Unity, then you just need to do the same algorithmic stuff written here in Unity. And that, in those cases, probably using shader might be a good idea for particles, I think. Maybe there is a what was it called? BFX graph, which you can use a graph node to control the particles. So probably you could tweak that to create similar stuff like these using particles, I think. But if you're just okay just sending the baked geometry created in Houdini, then you can just send it through Alembic or something like that. Topic for some future video: class conjecture. Can you make a video with it explaining and creating geometrical shape? Let me check what those are. Class conjecture. The concerned sequences defined what follows and positive engineer. Interesting. I haven't tried this one, but interesting pattern. Let me check this one. Thank you for suggesting. Okay, thank you for all the comments. Yup. Probably this is it for today. As a secret survivors were asking, maybe I could see how I can do it for each characters, but as SGL is suggesting, I mean not as Mansa XX is suggesting, it's true that if you change the number of characters for each frames, for each steps, for each text, maybe you need to think about how you can change these custom IDs. So it's a bit of challenging stuff, I think. Testing. Let me take a look at how we can tackle this, but I'm not sure if I can do this. So the overall the step that I wanted to show for today is already done, so if you have any questions for those, please ask. And if not, we are done with the original tutorial as I was planning for today. And after I have finished the live tutorial for today, I'm going to post the file that I've created today to the GitHub and paste this download page URL to the video description page of this YouTube live, so you can come back later to download the file that I've done today. Okay, and if you are kind enough, you can also support me doing these lives on the Patreon as well. I'll be really appreciated. Okay, but it's not really necessary. So let me check if how I can do this for each characters. Let's see. That is an interesting problem. Let's see. I shouldn't do this with this geo one when I'm gonna duplicate the geometry node. First of all, there is a chance that single characters include multiple primitives like these. So I think I cannot split the text from single text, or maybe if I can attach some attribute, like using this one, add text attributes. Okay, so each of the text has its index value. How does this relate it to these? Let me check. Okay, cannot see it. Okay, so starts with 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this text index can actually be used as a character index, so could be used for a custom ID itself, I think. Now that's good. Going to the scatter node. Maybe we would like to pass this text index to the scatter points. Can we do that directly? Output attributes, text index. All right. And okay. And we would like to do the same thing for those in-between points to have the custom index, but the problem is we do need to change the speed. I'm more interested in creating an effect in Houdini like this one and transferring the position attributes to Unity C#, and transferring the position attributes to Unity C#. I watched your other video where you did that to Unreal. Okay, I see. That's totally doable, I think. I mean, if you just want to send the points, you could also create a alembic geometry just including the points of particle information, and you can import that into Unity and just refer to this point information, which includes those custom attributes. I think there's a way to read the custom attributes inside Unity for alembic geometry. Forgot what that is. Alembic for Unity. Now in Unreal, the original alembic geometry does only read like color information and the position and UV. In order to read the custom attributes, not sure. I guess there is a way. I mean, you could do the same approach that I did for Unreal, making like vertex texture animation and use it with Unity as well, which works which works just fine as well as in Unreal, but there might be an easier way in Unity to read custom attributes, but if there's not, you can always use the same approach I did for Unreal. Yeah, maybe I could try that with other time. I haven't really test that out in Unity. It would be great if you could read these custom attributes. But not really sure if you can do this out of the box or not. Houdini engine output attribute script. Okay. So maybe using Houdini engines might be a good idea, I guess. I haven't tried that. I would like to try that out myself. For sure. Okay, so where was I? This is currently is having this text index. Oops. This one doesn't. It's a bit of a problem. You might need to get previous text index information as the next, as well as the next previous next text index information to do the smooth connection. Right. It's pretty hard. Pretty hard if I think it. I'll just give you an idea. Going back to the font node, what I could do is to get the previous text information by changing the iteration value right here to by subtracting by 1. So where is the text part? This is the iteration part, right? So if I do the -1 and also add it by the total number of iterations, so detail this is why I hate expressions. It's pretty hard to read because I have to write in one line. And then finally you want to calculate the modulus using this one so that you get the value in between 0 to 1. I still get the same value. Why is that? Didn't really change. Oh, it's weird. Okay, I guess some calculation is wrong here. So let me check one by one. F2A. So this is the part I need to calculate. And Huh. So this is the integer value -1 detail. Okay, so this is and wait a minute. And I'm calculating the modulus with the detail. Okay, so the number of parentheses looks correct. Num iterations. Num iterations, so the name of the detail is also correct. Huh. If I may change this to 1. Okay, I think I cannot use return. Huh. Am I missing something? F2A detail S. Okay. Wait a minute. Ah. Somehow I only have one text. Huh. That was the reason. Okay, so in those cases, I can just say okay, so starts from Houdini and then user to text. Now the previous text information is user. That's correct. If I make this +1, okay, so by doing this you'll be able to get the previous text information. Can you briefly share your career path right now? I have started working as an architectural designer in an architectural firm. Then, but mostly using programming languages to create geometries and create some applications for architectural designers. And after I have quit those architectural firm, I have made my own business to do more of those geometrical designs and the application development as a freelance, and that's what I'm being continue doing. Like ArcBiz, I also do ArcBiz, but more likely to create how do I say? Yeah, well, in big category, I think it can be said as archviz, for sure. More like interior and facade designs, stuff like that, or sometimes creating some installations. A physical object, as a physical object, I mean. So I also like using digital fabrication as well. Like using laser cut, CNC, 3D printing, all those stuff. I also like these as well. Okay, where was I? So, What's the best way to do this? What do we get after this one? We do have this text index at some point. Yup. And going back to this one. The thing is, I just need to change the speed based on this text index information. Now it's gone. Somewhere, which is available right here. Although, what's the best way to refer to those? Let's see. I guess one way to think is to get the longest character text out of 3 texts, if I have 3 texts. Count each character numbers and get the longest characters and make the ID based on the longest characters. So if you have this, in this case, Houdini has the longest letters, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters. This one has 4, this one has 4. So if I make the 7 characters with Houdini, I mean if I make 7 custom index for Houdini, then I can use the other, I mean for other 4 and 4, I can split those 7 into these 4 somehow. Meaning maybe the custom index used for N and I can be used for R, D and I can be used for E, and so on. Yeah, but how do we effectively split it? That's the problem. That is the problem. Wow. No, it doesn't really work well. It doesn't really work well. Okay, well, I think I can't seem to make this in time. Let me think for 5 more minutes, and if I cannot think about it, maybe I'll keep it for another time. Yeah, maybe I'm thinking to complex. Maybe there is a easy way to do this. I guess it's still a good idea to make this separated as okay. Let me check. So if I do it like this, and for custom ID, meaning a text index, I can, oops. I can transfer this text index from this to this in middle point cloud, and name it as next text index or next ID or next character ID. Point one and you also want to get the previous point ID, text ID as well. Which you want to get, look for this text index. Okay, this is not inside a point, but it's inside a primitive. Huh. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I at grep cid is equal to point text index, like that. Like this. So I have right now have previous character ID and next character ID like this. Alright, and this one only has this text ID. Okay, now how does this work after creating the curve? Okay, something weird. No, no, it's not really working. It's not really work. Doesn't really work. What I want to do is to morph between characters. Let's see if I can do something by tweaking the UV sample. Right. I do know which index we are right now by reading this information, this index information. So based on the index, I know which transition we're in right now. If that's so, we could actually change the speed for each characters based on those information. Yep. Yep, I think so. I think that's possible. I think that is possible. To do that, I do need a primitive attribute informations applied, derived from each text. So when we have created the primitive somewhere around here, yep, this is where I need to set which primitive belongs to which text index, for which character index for each text. Alright, so actually I don't really need this one, and I don't really need these one, but I do need this one. Yep. Yeah, I think I do need this one for sure. Okay. And going back to the add midpoint. Okay. What I want to do now is to Actually, I am going to make the point group hello, cheers, thanks for joining. Most of the stuff I'm being finished. I'm just trying out some optional stuff here, and thanks for those are still joining. I'm gonna create a point group, and for the other one I'm going to name it as, I don't know, maybe middle. Okay, now after leaving the for loop, I'm just going to get the middle, the text group is in delete node point, right? And the number of point is 3000, and if I divide this 3000 by 3, you'll be able to get the number of primitive, right? So I'm going to connect this right here, and if we try to get the same ID for each primitive, maybe I could do this in other primitive wrangle. This one. And transfer character ID. Okay, which is currently called as text index, this one. Okay, and currently, if I look at each primitive, the primitive itself doesn't have an ID, so let's also create a ID for primitive, which is same as the primitive number. So sep prim attriv ID prim number. Okay, now what I want to do next is to find the corresponding points which shares the same ID. So find attriv val from the second input. The attribute class is point. What's the name of the function? Point. Then the attribute name is ID. The value is derived from the current primitive ID. Okay, let me check the number of primitive that I got, or a number of attribute that I got, and it has to be the same number of text, which means in this case 3. 3. Okay, that's good. Now I'm gonna loop through all the points. Then get the text index, which means the character index from the point. And then store this into a additional or custom array, so char indexes. Push char indexes, char index, and finally apply this character indexes into the primitive attribute. Okay, so if I look at this one, these represents the each primitive or each like trail path curves character index at each 40 frame in this case. So from 1 to 40 frame, the first 0 means we are using the character 0 for that trail. From 40 to 80 we are using 0. That's obvious because this is always the first letter. Now if we look at some other values, sometimes it's 533 means this first letter, I mean the curve, for this curve the fifth letter is used, and then the second letter is used, and third letter is used in 100 to 120, and so on. Okay, so those information looks good. Let's see if those doesn't being deleted. Okay, now we are ready to use those information for the movement. Okay, so let's get that information int char indexes is equal to ei at char indexes. And we can get the corresponding character index at specific frame by using this index value, which is in between 0 to 2, right? So int char index is equal to char indexes at index. Okay, now that we have this character index value, we can then use this to control the speed for each characters. Now to do that, we need to have a maximum character length, and forgot to have that information passed out. So going back to the text information, let's see if we have that information. We don't. We actually don't. So let's have the attribute promote to pass that maximum character index informations point to point from text index to max text index using the maximum. Okay, actually has to be primitive to primitive. Okay, we don't really see it. Maybe primitive to primitive doesn't really work. Let's change this to primitive to detail. Okay, so this is the maximum index. And let's also pass that information with the scatter node. Does that passed? Yep. Nope. Seems like it hasn't been passed for some reason. Nope. Okay, didn't really pass out the information, so I'm just going to refer to it using the wrangle. Okay, so ptnum. So how should we do this? I'm going to use the point wrangle. Probably I can just connect this to this ID here and use the max text index is equal to detail max text index Alright, looks good. Now going back to this one right here, we need to pass that max text index as well. So let's create another array. Well, does it have to be an array? No, it doesn't really have to be an array. Does it? Oh yeah, it does. It does. Because we have to split it for each frame. So max char indexes. And then max char max text index and push max char. Alright, and then do the similar stuff like this. Like this. Let's check if I look at the, this is primitive wrangle, so if I look at the primitive, okay, so looks correct. So 633 means the first frame, the maximum text index number is equal to 6, and then 3 and 3, which looks correct. Now probably I didn't really need it to make it like these, because this is always the same number for the first 40, but it still works. So I'll just go with this. Going back to the move point, we can now get this information as well. Int max char indexes, I at max char indexes, and we could get this max char index. Alright, now we can calculate the character derived information called C by dividing the char index by the max char index. As in result, you'll be able to get a value in between 0 to 1. If there's only one character, then you'll get the value 0. Or if it's going to divide it by 0, maybe you'll get some errors. So make sure that you always get maximum character index value as the minimum value of this max character index is equal to 1. So I'm going to say minimum is equal to 1. And then also make it as a float. You don't want to divide between integer and integer. Okay, now that I've got the C value, I can now should be able to use this to change the speed for the characters to transfer into the another text. Okay, so where should I do that? Probably where I'm doing this NF right here, or probably right here, FR. So what I need to do is to shift this FR value based on this CR value. Change the timing when those FR starts to make increased. Yeah. So let's see. If I simply try to do this, how do I do this? How do I do this? What happened if I just try to add it by C? I think this will just create something weird, but let's see what happens. Yeah, not really good. So let's say we have maybe C to, we can just think Okay, and we want to deform this points, which is on the in-between points, slowly to A, then B, then C, and then A becomes point, B becomes point, C becomes point. So to do that, let me try with the really simple equations, see if this works. First of all, I'm going to limit or subtract the FR by 0.5. Okay. Then I'm going to divide the 0.5 by the max character index, multiply by C, and then add it to an FR and see what happens. Okay. Let's try to control the speed. I mean, let's make this linear so that we can see the effect. Let's just show with the points. Okay, I kind of see what kind of I do see some words being appearing one by one. I'm not sure if this is what I wanted, and it looks like it's showing from backward. Nope. Yep. The backward problem can be, I think, be fixed by just subtracting C by 1. But what if I want to make it a bit more slower? Val. I'm gonna make this C val, and this C val, I'm gonna use this right here. And if it's equal to 0, then it's pretty much the same as the previous setup. But if I make this really high, doesn't seem to show up. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Yeah, I guess this is still correct. Bit weird. How is that? Let me try to increase the whole frame. guess I'm missing something. And what's that? Not sure. Okay, so if it's equal to 0, trying to use the whole frame. If it's equal to 0, then everything just changes. Yep. But if I make this to 1, for 0 to 100 doesn't really happen anything, so that's weird. That is not correct. Let me check the calculation here. If I check the detail attribute, okay, somehow it's negative. That is totally wrong. What if I don't have this value? Okay. I see. Okay, I think I cannot just do like this, but instead somehow remap this FR into let me go back and think. So currently FR is going from 0 to 1. Alright, now we have 3 characters. We want to split this into 3 sections, and from 0 to the first section we want to run A, and then B and C. And we do already have this information for characters with C index and which is this one right here, which is in between 0 to 1. Right. Now so somehow I need to remap this C value, which corresponds to the text flow, text index, and can be used for each of the section. Okay, so probably I need to do similar stuff I did for the frame, just like I did right here. So first I am dividing the FR by the number of characters. I'm gonna name this F. Okay, now I'm gonna create a new FR value, which is FR section multiplied by C character index plus a plus derived from the current frame. Wait a minute, this has to be 1.0. And then plus FR E divided by max character index okay, let me think. No, actually, I have to multiply it by max character index and then get the fraction. Is it? Is it? No, actually not. Actually not. Wait, what did I do last time? Last time I used this. Okay, so this right now is in between 0 to 1. But then I still need to divide this by max character index. Don't I? Okay, let's see. I'm gonna check this value again. Okay. Now I'm gonna convert. Change this to NFR. See what happens. Okay, nope. It's totally wrong. It's just going in between U and D. Okay, well. Okay, well. Has to be some calculation stuff done right here, so. But I think you already have a necessary information in order to achieve it, which is these one and this one. Just need to do some smart calculation stuff right here, which currently I am failing. Alright. Right. Think like FR is the whole frame. Actually, same as doing things that I did here. Like this. Yeah. So this is 1 divided by number, fr fraction, fr section, multiplied by carrier index, which corresponds to this one. And fr divided by number, which is the same. But somehow I'm getting something wrong. Right. Okay. Oh. Let me check the NFR value again. Oh, okay, it's going over 1. That's not supposed to happen. It has to be in between 0 to 1. Okay. Let me check this one. Okay, so this is correct. Although, yeah, I think that's correct. And the character index, yeah. Let me just keep the primitive so that I can check the attribute for each primitive. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think this is correct. Is it? Yeah, I think so. Now, problem is this one, I guess. Let's first check this value here. Okay, so it goes until 6. Yeah, that's should be correct. And now getting the fraction. Just getting those fraction values, that's also correct. Okay, now the problem is this part right here. If I check this value, it shouldn't go over 1. But I am getting the value equal to 1. for some reason. Huh. Huh. I might need to make this edit by 1. Not really. Oh wait, I need to do the same thing. 4. Did you go to university to learn Houdini, or you self-taught? Yeah, I'm self-taught. I think I started 4 years ago. Just looking at those tutorials on Vimeo and YouTube, and I think that's all I did. When I went to university, I didn't really know about Houdini, which was like 10 years ago. Let me have this right here, and let me have this value right here. This goes until 1 point. Actually, this looks correct for the next frame. Wait a minute, I do see the value is at c equal to 1. That's where the problem is. And that's where fr section multiplied by current index. Okay, so the problem is there's a chance that this character index is... Wait. Okay, I do have this equal to 1. For sectioned. Okay, it's understandable that we get. Okay, so probably I just need to add this by 1. Yeah. Guess that should do the job. Now now the NFR value goes in between 0 to 1. I can see the problem is that the value is going back and forth. Well, now let's change this to NFR, remove the primitive. What would happen? Okay, now doesn't really work. Pretty much stuck. There, I believe there is easy equations to solve this. Just using those informations. Just my head is not working much to estimate the correct information. Well, we don't need this. We do have the C information. Yeah, it's okay, so in between we have this FR, right? And let me disable this. If I multiply FR by a max car index, and then get the fraction, this itself becomes 0 to 1. Now what if I replace FR with this one? What happens? So you are seeing Houdini 6 times. Now for each step, I want to change this. Instead of showing Houdini, I want to show each characters. Right? Let's increase more steps. Okay, so to do that, we do need this C for sure. Now that's the problem. How do we do that? We have C, which is in between, which is currently (0 to 1). Now, if I add it by C and calculate the modulus, which is same as getting the fraction. Nope. Nope. getting the right value. I see. C has not been normalized. Thought I did. Character index. Shoot. This has to be maximum. Alright. So, maybe that was the reason it didn't work. Huh. Now I am seeing the characters being jumping from backward 6 times. Now that's not really what I want. For each step I want to change the character itself. So for the first step I'm going to change just H. Second step I'm going to change just C, and so on. Right. So for the first step, how do we do that? The curve that I want to make for C value. A is 1 or 0, B is 1, C is 2, and so on. So first I want to change this one. Consider this is a timeline, and I'm going to split it into 4. And for A, in order to change this C value right here, it's a bit confusing because we're having 2 C's. Let's name this theta. Okay. So that's theta. Wait, this is not what we need to change, but this is F value that we need to change. And when it's equal to A, let's say F0 is corresponding to A value. So for this one, I'm going to make like this. For B, I want to make like this. C and D. Like that. Like a step. So this itself can be used as an offset value, I guess. Right. And we can check the current ID by current index is equal to fraction multiplied by, I'll call this NFR. Is equal to a floor of FR multiplied by max char index. Right. And simply we need to do the comparison between this end and this character index. Right. So if n or character index is smaller than an end, then NFR is equal to 0. If char index is more than an end, NFR is equal to 1. Then use the this looks so weird. It does change one by one, but I don't really like how it looks on the boundary. It just stops at some point. Yeah, maybe the condition, this kind of condition doesn't really make a smooth animation, so gotta think the other way. But anyway, it's just spending too much time with this one, so I'm just going to stop here. Hopefully you'll get some hint from the way I did here. Didn't really solve the problem, but hopefully it can be used for as an idea. Maybe I think there is a chance to use the same logic with a bit more cleaner result. But just that my brain doesn't really work at this time of the day, so I hope you could solve it with the hint that I gave you. Sorry that I couldn't solve it. Hopefully, if you be able to solve it, please leave some comment and how you did it. Okay, but overall what I wanted to show is this one. So hopefully you like what I did here today. Sorry for taking too much time for the last hour. Alright. Okay. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you everybody for watching, and thank you for all the comments as well. I'll just finish the live at this point and upload the file to the video description page so that you can download the same file that I've created right here and continue doing what you want to do. Right, so that's it for today. Thank you very much, and hopefully I'll see you next week as well with another topic. Okay, thank you. Okay, no problem with the spell mistake. I always get that. Right. Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining.